the Attorney General of Minnesota is now doing something that is actually legally dangerous. If you would like to see the officer in this case go to jail, then you need to charge him with the crime that he committed, and then you need to convict him of that crime. One of the great dangers that we have seen in other cases is overcharging, right? People putting forth a charge that they cannot fulfill. So, for example, if there had been an attempt to charge George Zimmerman with manslaughter as opposed to murder, there's a better case that he's probably in jail right now. If, however, you're talking about charging somebody with second-degree or first-degree murder when they're obviously guilty of manslaughter or assault, then you can easily see somebody acquitted on a higher charge. Now, people don't seem to understand how this works. A charge is not your indicator of how seriously you take a crime. Right? That is not how charging works. If you say second-degree murder as opposed to third-degree murder, that's not because you're taking the crime more seriously. Or if you say third-degree murder as opposed to second-degree murder, that's not because you're taking the crime less seriously. Crimes have definitions. And so what we have seen in the media and from many of the people online is that they think that because Attorney General Keith Ellison upgraded charges against the former Minneapolis police officer who knelt on George Floyd's neck from third-degree murder to second-degree murder, that this is somehow an indicator that Minnesota is taking this thing more seriously. That's really not how criminal law is supposed to work, nor should any of these decisions be driven by people outside the justice system making decisions about how to elevate charges based on public outrage. Like that's a fool's errand. It's stupid for a variety of reasons. One, it's not equal justice under law. But two, it is really, really stupid to change your charges to something you can't prove because of public pressure. Magic Johnson is a good indicator of the sort of reaction that the elevation of the charges earned online. So Magic Johnson, obviously the former NBA star and now part owner of the LA Lakers, is I'm so thrilled that Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison amended the police officer who killed George Floyd's charge to second degree from third degree, and have then announced the other 3 Minneapolis officers have been charged with aiding and abetting George Floyd's murder. I'm wondering what his legal take is on that. Because, he says the work does not stop here. They must be sentenced. We also need to continue to call for change with our policymakers. If you believe that agitation gets charges elevated, that's really not a good thing. You don't want political agitation elevating charges. You want people charged with the crimes they commit. Okay, that is a bad thing. And everyone, left, right, and center, should agree that is a bad thing. If you can just agitate so that someone is charged with a crime with a higher penalty, that's not how the justice system is supposed to work. But the real question is whether they are being charged with the correct crime. And the reason I'm talking about this is because if you're a defense lawyer and you look at the case against Derek Chauvin, it is not impossible that Derek Chauvin gets off on this case. It is not impossible that he's acquitted. In fact, I would say that there's at least a 35% possibility that he is acquitted on these charges. And the reason I say that is because of two specific elements. One is that the charges themselves might be overcharged. So when you look at what the charges suggest, the differences between second and third degree murder, for example, second degree murder is typically described as you have to have intent to have done it, right? Intent is a key element of the case. Well, it's really not clear from the video that Chauvin intended to kill him. It looks more like malicious and wanton destruction, right? I mean, it looks more like third degree. Third degree is malicious, is basically reckless disregard, right? That you did something that could kill somebody and you didn't care and you just did it anyway, right? That's what that video looks like. Does it look like Chauvin was actively attempting to kill George Floyd? Second degree sort of requires that. Now, there are various sort of interpretations of these charges. There's a good piece over at Heritage Foundation from a legal expert there saying that second degree actually is the appropriate charge. I'll get to that in a second. But according to CNN, under Minnesota law, third degree murder is defined as causing death of a person by perpetrating an act eminently dangerous to others and evincing a depraved mind without regard for life and without intent to kill, which is what this looks like. But they just elevated it from third degree to second degree. According to CNN legal analyst Laura Coates, a former U.S. district attorney for the District of Columbia, she is saying that now the other charges would require that a person plans and willingly carries out a killing or has intention to kill in the spur of the moment. Now, the other possibility is second degree murder is felony murder, is that you're committing a felony and in the process of the felony, you kill somebody. So you're robbing a store and your gun accidentally goes off and you kill somebody. That's felony murder. You'd have to claim that Chauvin was committing a felony, which I guess you could call this felony assault, maybe. And that's the theory of the case, perhaps. But it's a risky charge. It depends under which charges they're moving. If they're going to claim that Chauvin had intent to kill Floyd, you could certainly see a jury saying, well, it looks more like he accidentally killed him after doing a very, very bad, terrible, brutal thing. And so he's not actually guilty of second degree murder. He might be guilty of manslaughter, for example, voluntary manslaughter. You could see a jury doing that. And this has happened in other cases. Overcharging leads to acquittals. So that is problem number one with the case. Then there is the problem of the other people who are being charged. So they're charging the 3 other officers with aiding and abetting. The statute that charges aiding and abetting is you are criminally liable for a crime committed by another if a person intentionally aids, advises, hires, counsels, or conspires with or otherwise procures the other to commit the crime. So usually that means like you hired somebody or you were riding in the same car with somebody and you decided to commit the crime together. You standing by and not doing anything, not quite as clear under Minnesota law, right? According to legal expert over at the Daily Signal, the 3 other officers' mere presence at the scene or their inaction alone would not be sufficient for aiding and abetting. Instead, they would have had to play a knowing role in Chauvin's crime. Now, it's possible they get convicted if they, quote unquote, did nothing to prevent the offenses committed or the brutal activity. Because if you must have known of the activity and made no effort to stop it, then that makes the crime possible. You could theoretically make that case, but it's going to be hard to argue aiding and abetting when the officers are just standing there. Meaning, were they complicit in the act? That's a hard legal line to draw. So again, that's not making the case that they shouldn't be convicted, but it is making the case that you actually want to look at these facts, because if you think things are bad right now, wait until a jury acquits the 3 other officers on charges of aiding and abetting because the legal definition ain't all that clear, or if Derek Chauvin gets off because Ellison overcharged. That could be a real disaster. That's why you have to be very specific as a prosecutor in exactly what you are doing. He should go to jail. I mean, none of this is to doubt that Chauvin did something brutal and should go to jail. The question is, you need to prepare the American public for the facts of the case, because otherwise what you end up with is this miasmatic sense in the atmosphere that Chauvin is going to go to jail for life, and then Ellison overcharges, or the defense puts on a fairly solid case and he gets off, and then it's the American justice system is racist again. People need to know this. This is not me making a defense of the officer's activity at all. The officer should go to jail. The question is, under what circumstances and for what crime? Because again, if you overcharge, you end up with an acquittal, and things are going to be a lot worse a year from now if there's an acquittal.